station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning. Robin, you and I have a friend, and everybody who listens to this show knows our friend Doug. And Doug has Down syndrome, and we've known Doug since, well, I've known Doug since 1972, and I guess you met him for the first time in the mid-'80s somewhere.
And he was 11, I think, when you met him.
And he can be a trip to be with sometimes, Jenny. One of my favorite things about Doug, and he listens all the time, so Doug, if you're listening, we love you.
Yeah, he's 54 now.
One of the things, he will tell me his dreams. I never knew anybody could remember so much of their dreams. Usually, I mean, his dreams can take 15 minutes to tell you.
Yeah.
So how do you remember so much of your dreams? Right? But anyway, he comes over for breakfast at my place, usually on Saturdays, and we just kind of, just yap it up, just whatever
Hang
guy
out.
talk. Yeah.
Taking places.
Lisa Davis is on the phone, and she's the producer and host of the It's Your Health radio and TV programs. She's also the producer and co-host of the radio show called Naturally Savvy on Radio MD, and the go-to girl for What's Hot in Health. She is a busy broadcaster.
Yep.
She's also the mother of a daughter with PDD-NOS. Oh my goodness, I don't even know what I'm reading here. NLD and ADHD, and she's an author. And Tricia Bliven-Chasinoff, and Tricia, you'll have to correct me when you come on if I said your name wrong. Tricia is a neuroscientist, a freelance writer, and she has a passion for understanding how the brain functions. And she is the mother of an Aspergian old soul son.
Yep.
So we'll have to find out what those are and how to pronounce those things. The book that the ladies are talking about is called Easy to Love But Hard to Live With Real People, Invisible Disabilities, True Stories. I'm all ears with this one.
Yes.
It's a fascinating topic. And, people sometimes compliment me because of my relationship with Doug. Say, how do you have the patience? Like, you know what? 'Cause I just talk to him like a normal person. He sometimes has weird answers, but talk to him like a normal person. Lisa and Tricia, good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Thank you for being on the air with us today. Tricia, how did I do with your name, first of all?
You did quite well. Most people get Bliven, but Bliven-Chasinoff, and you mostly got Bliven, and you actually got Chasinoff all the way.
Okay. All right. Where are you both? Are you both in the same place?
No,
I'm in the Massachusetts
in the
area.
Philadelphia suburbs.
Okay, Philadelphia and Massachusetts is what it sounded like. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, for being on the air with us today. Who's the book for? Let's start there. The book, would it be for somebody like me? I got a friend with Down syndrome. Would this help me somehow?
I think the book could be for anyone. Anybody who has an invisible disability, anyone who knows anybody with an invisible disability, or anybody who just wants to understand people's stories and kind of grow their compassion a little bit.
Is an invisible disability always along the lines of what I was describing, or could it be something that we develop?
Yes, it could be both. So an invisible disability is any kind of disability that, two things. One, it can't be seen. You can't look at a person and see that they have a particular challenge. So there's no morphology, they're not in a wheelchair, they're not obviously disabled in a way that most people would be able to discern. And that could range from most mental health issues, depression, anxiety, OCD, body dysmorphic disorder,
Right.
on and on. It could also be a learning disability like dyslexia. It can be a developmental disorder like high-functioning autism, or the alphabet soup that you were talking about with regard to Lisa's daughter. So there's a whole range, a whole constellation of invisible disabilities. They can also include physical disabilities like fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, or celiac disease. Those were not addressed in this book. We addressed in this book was brain-based invisible disabilities.
Okay. And again, doesn't matter what causes it. It could be a brain. It could be brain damage, or it could be a birth defect, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And is the word defect fair, or is that an improper word when we say defect?
Well, I would wouldn't call it that, would you, Tricia? What do you think?
What'd you say?
I said I don't know if I would call it that. I don't think of it that way as a defect. I think of it as like a neurological difference. Would you? She's the neuroscientist, so I'll let her say.
Well, certainly the word defect is something that is used clinically, and I think it's an unfortunate term because just the whole idea of defective is it's somewhat unkind. But that is a word that is used correctly from a clinical perspective. But no, I think the way I like to think about invisible disabilities are deviations from in any way from the norm, for lack of a better. I don't even like the word normal either. But there's conditions that make it more challenging for people to navigate their way through the world.
Okay, all right. The title of the book, Easy to Love But Hard to Live With. Just real quick story. Our friend who I was just referring to, his name is Doug, he... the state works with him. And every once in a while there'll be an agency that is contracted with the state that I don't like.
Yeah.
To be honest. And they'll try to put him in a home, and he lives by himself. He lives right next door to me, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
And I'm kind of his, go-to guy. But I thought, well, if everything falls through, I'm just going to see if he can just live with me. Just forget about it. And he'll live with me. I don't know that it would be so hard, though. I mean, it'd be, I don't know. Easy to love, hard to live with. Explain. I'm guessing, everybody's different. Some people are hard to live with, and there's no real brain issue.
Yeah.
Like me. I'm hard to live with.
Well, I think with the book, what I thought was interesting is that it sort of has a double meaning, because in the book there's stories by people who have the invisible disabilities, and it's hard for them to live with them, and then there's people who love them, and it's hard for us, to live with them in that category, for us to live with them. But part of it is that this is from a series. The first book is Easy to Love But Hard to Raise, which is fantastic. Oh my gosh, this amazing resource for caregivers and parents. So we needed to fit in with that, easy to love, but. So we sort of were already in this designated area of you've got to fit it in this pattern. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I do like that it has that double meaning of both for the person and for the other person living.
I gotcha. Okay.
Well, the book is very individualized, because people can't put other people in a niche and say one thing is good for everyone. Lisa, you're the mother of a young daughter. We were told she was 9, and everybody's personality is different.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, she is the most creative, loving child ever, and she flips out at the drop of a hat. Over things you're like, what? It's very different. It's still very challenging, but she's the love of my life, and it's just you learn to navigate. You learn to help people who have trouble self-regulating, which is a big issue for kids too, because PD-DNOS is part of the autism spectrum. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. But the thing is, when she's a grown-up, she's going to have her own skills and her own ways of self-regulating. Because one of the things that I think people misunderstand is that these are issues that affect kids. There's an interview with Henry Winkler in the book that I did about his dyslexia. And I listened to him recently on another show, and the host said, oh, so you were dyslexic when you were a kid. And he said, I'm still dyslexic. And it's just like with ADHD. If you had it as a kid, you still have it as an adult. Now it might affect your organizational skills, your relationships, some other challenges, but it's still there. But you're going to have better coping skills, hopefully, and if not, then our book can definitely help you, because we have top experts offering advice as well.
We had a news story about it. A father and son went to the beach in New Smyrna, and the son is autistic, and he loves the water, and he doesn't understand fear at all. So he'll go out as far as he can possibly go, just keep swimming and swimming and swimming, and he's not afraid. Christopher's his name, and anyway. I've often thought, how scary is that? To have a child who loves to swim and doesn't care how far he goes out.
It is really scary. Although my daughter has a lot of anxiety, so it's funny that you mentioned that, because we went to the beach yesterday. We had this unusually warm day. Now it's back to regular fall weather yesterday. And she loves the ocean, but it took her years to even put her feet in because she was so afraid.
Oh, she's the opposite.
Yeah, so it's different. What about your son, Tricia? He has Asperger's. How is he about things like that?
He's more like Lila. He is.
He is, yeah.
very anxious and unwilling a lot of times to try new things. Although as he gets older, that's definitely getting a little bit better, and his kind of sensory systems are regulating and working in a more typical fashion. But he's certainly not been the I'm going to run with abandon into the ocean kind of kid ever.
do you know what I love about this is we're listening to you talk about the two children in your lives. You're listening to us talk about our friend, and that's what the book is. The book is essays of people talking about the people they love.
Exactly.
Yes, and sometimes they're talking about their own. It's either everything's written in the first person, which is a very powerful way to tell a story. But there's a section where people are talking about the people in their lives that they love, and it could be a sibling or an adult child or a parent or a spouse, or a lot. The first section of the book is dedicated to stories, people telling their own stories or their own struggles with invisible disabilities.
And Tricia, tell us about yours. I know I shouldn't jump in and ask a question. I'm so rude. That's the problem.
You're a radio host. You're a radio host. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that she had time to share because it's so amazing.
It is my story is, I think, very representative of the stories in the book, and in some ways boils down the reason I wanted to create this book. So I have obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a form of anxiety disorder. A form of anxiety disorder that tends to be on the more severe end of the spectrum of anxiety disorders. And I first really developed debilitating symptoms when I was 11 years old. And before that, there were little glimpses here and there. But my very first episode, true OCD episode, was when I was 11, and I became terrified that I was pregnant. Now, keep in mind, I was 11, and my fear was that I had gotten drugged on the way to the bus stop and kidnapped, or I had forgotten some important event. And I was convinced that I was pregnant, and it went on, and I told nobody. And so the obsession was this fear of pregnancy, and the compulsion was that I was constantly checking my body for signs of pregnancy, poking my stomach. I would read over and over again. This is back in the early 80s. I would read over and over, like the medical textbook that my mom had, which had a section on pregnancy and pregnancy symptoms. I was constantly checking my body for that.
Boy, at 11, I wouldn't have even known how this pregnancy thing happens.
Yeah, right. Well, she drank a glass.
It rationally, it made no sense. It was completely illogical, and it completely ruled my life. But I was incredibly embarrassed to share this, and I suffered in silence. And it went on for probably until sometime in college. And throughout the course of my life, that obsession was replaced by different ones. I went through an HIV obsession.
What is that?
Where I became terrified that if I would touch something, I would contract HIV. And I was, again, constantly reading. By that time we had the internet, so I can go online and read all the symptoms of HIV and check my body for that all the time. It was very, very difficult.
So I have a question about what you're saying. That doesn't sound like this is just a radio guy, and I don't have anywhere near the background you ladies have. So with that disclaimer said, it doesn't sound like a brain thing. It sounds like an emotional thing. Not that I'm making it smaller than it is. It sounds serious, but it doesn't sound like a brain thing.
It very much is a brain thing.
It is.
Mental illness, by definition, is a brain-based disorders. Every mental illness that you can name has some sort of origin, neurological origin.
So would somebody who's like extremely superstitious, I mean seriously superstitious, that person has a mental disorder?
Well, if that superstition is interfering significantly with their ability to live their lives and function with the people around them, then yes.
Yes, yeah.
Because
that no
I
longer is called superstition. That is called likely a variation of obsessive compulsive disorder.
Wow, because I knew a lady who would not want it when I was a younger guy, and sometimes I would drive her places. She would not want me to drive over railroad tracks. I had to go to a place where there was an overpass or an underpass.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so convenient to drive over them. It was right down the road. And so I couldn't. So she had a mental disorder.
Well, I mean, that is one way of maybe. I mean, we certainly, neither Lisa or I could actually make that diagnosis, but if that was something that is interfering significantly with her ability to function in the world, then yes, or maybe she was just a pain.
Well, my mother couldn't drive on the freeway because the cars went too fast, and everyone's like, Diane, just drive on the freeway. But she had severe sensory processing disorder, and everything was too fast, and she would get anxious, and that was a real. So maybe she had something like that.
But if you think about the title of the book, and I know you explained it already, but if somebody who's hard to live with, that would make sense. If you're driving someplace. And look at this cute little town. And, whoa, don't go over those tracks.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's kind of hard to live with, isn't it?
Yeah, and getting back to my story, my husband, God bless his heart, there are times, and I'm a lot better now for multiple reasons than I used to be with my OCD. But boy, I'm pretty lovable, but it's very hard to live with when I am in that OCD cycle. Very hard to live with.
When you were growing up, and then you were on the dating scene, and you felt like you wanted to get married and have a family, did you withhold yourself from getting into relationships because you didn't want to burden the other person?
That's a great question.
I don't think that, yes, but not because I didn't want to burden the other person, because I was afraid of that other person finding out and leaving once they realized kind of the depth of my anxiety. And I lived in such a state of shame because I had these obsessions and compulsions, and I lived with them, and they probably occupied 95% of my thoughts. I didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew. Everybody knew I was anxious. Everybody knew I was uptight. Everybody would tell me, just relax, stop worrying so much. And I viewed that. I viewed my anxiety. I viewed my OCD as a character flaw. Like, well, gosh, if I could just stop worrying, if I had more willpower to make myself stop being so afraid all the time, then life would be better. But there's something wrong with me as a person.
So are there circumstances that make it like a lot easier? Like if you're on a vacation on a Hawaiian island or something like that, is it less? Like when you're at work and it's very tense, is it more? I mean, does it vary because of outside variables?
I think there was some influence, and sometimes if I was really distracted, then maybe, I would not focus on it quite as much. But for the most part, my OCD drove the boat. It was in charge. And so much of my energy went to hiding it and pushing my way through every day despite it. And I think what's so important about this book is that I tell my story in the book. But for me, and the reason it was so important to tell my story, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s and I read somebody else's story. And I read a story online about a person who had OCD, who was going through exactly. I mean, I could have written this story, every last word. And I remember sitting in my kitchen that day and feeling like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. That, oh my goodness, maybe I just don't have a personality flaw. Maybe I'm not weak or pathetic. Maybe I have OCD. Maybe I have an illness that I don't have to feel ashamed of, that I can just
so
treat.
Suddenly it wasn't something that was to be embarrassed of. And that made it easier.
Yes, it stopped becoming a character flaw and started becoming something that I could manage, that I could understand, that I could treat.
Do you know how I can relate to that?
And the shame melted away.
I can relate to that, maybe not completely, but I can relate to that with stage fright. Rob and I do a lot of stage work, and while radio doesn't give us the jitters, stages do.
Yes.
And so before you go on a stage, you get literally this paralyzing stage fright. And we were listening to an interview with Carly Simon, and she was talking about her stage fright. And I thought, same as you, when you hear somebody else having it, well, it must be normal. If Carly Simon has it, it must be normal.
Right.
So all of a sudden, it became something normal, and even though it still happens, it was easier to accept. That sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah, and that is why this book is so incredibly important. This book is important because there are 35 people from a diverse range of backgrounds who are all fearlessly telling their story. And they tell their stories so people like you and people like me and people like Lisa can see ourselves or see the people we love in those stories and realize, wow, we can let go of the shame, we can let go of the isolation, and maybe we can start connecting with ourselves in a different way, in a more positive and helpful way.
And Lisa, you make sure that the community is made a better place for your daughter to grow up in, because people can be cruel.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, when she was first, it took us years to get her the right diagnoses and the right help, and even within what she had, she was still more extreme in certain areas. The specialists would be like, well, we've never seen anything quite like this. It's just like, oh, and then my mother, who had severe sensory processing disorder, I mentioned, she went her whole life without ever being validated by the medical profession, and then she died in her 50s of ovarian cancer. I mean, the whole story is so sad. And she had fibromyalgia, another invisible disability that she also was told she was just in her head. And, it just broke my heart. And so I don't want anyone to have to go through that. And I look at my daughter, who gets the help that she needs, and she's the happiest kid. Even though she gets mad easily, she's very happy overall. And she's going to get love and support. And it's such a huge difference.
It's easier to love our children than a spouse, I think.
Yeah.
Because, or maybe before they become a spouse. But I mean, if you're dating somebody, and then you realize there's an issue, you might say, whoop, let me go for somebody else. But you're not going to do that with your child. With your child, you're going to be there. You're going to love that person. And I don't know. I think we maybe would be better off loving somebody who needed love. And you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's even corny.
No, that totally makes sense. Yeah, no, I think it really does. And yeah, I mean, I love my daughter so much it hurts sometimes.
Will she be able to live by herself when she grows up?
Oh yeah, she'll be fine. I mean, she says that she's going to live with us forever, but I'm like, we'll see about that. But she and I are like probably overly attached. We are very close. But yeah, I mean, she's only in 3rd grade, and yeah, she'll be fine. I mean, she'll be a little quirky, but I think she'll be fine.
I don't know if I have a mental illness, but my son is 28. He just flew to San Francisco from here in Florida. I was on FlightAware watching his flight on Track Flight, whatever the thing is called.
Yes.
He's 28, and I'm still worried about him.
Yeah, well, that's good. You're a good dad.
So maybe I'm a little bit obsessed with something. I don't know.
When you have famous people that you interview, like Henry Winkler, and then you said he had dyslexia, it's really. Do you feel that it's good to bring the famous people out in the forefront, even though dyslexia doesn't seem to be as complicated as ADHD or Asperger's?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think part of the appeal is that who doesn't love Henry Winkler? I mean, he's like the nicest guy. Everybody loves the Fonz. And I think it's interesting to see somebody who was called a dumb dog growing up. His parents were from Germany, and in German, I don't know the word for dumb dog. They were terrible to him, and yet he became successful. There was one teacher in high school, Mr. Rock, who believed in him. And that makes a difference. So having someone that believes in you. But yeah, I mean, I think that it might not be as serious as some. But for somebody who's called stupid constantly, I think it is as serious, right?
Really?
I mean, he was constantly put down. And he had to let that, he said it took years to get that. Even when he was successful, if you're constantly called dumb, then it's really hard to let that go.
He does seem like a nice guy.
Very damaging.
We've never spoken to him, but he does seem nice.
He's fabulous.
Well, you ladies are fabulous. Thank you for being on the air. I love the conversation. I love the fact that we were just kind of chatting. It was more like a chat than an interview, and I love that. The book is called Easy to Love but Hard to Live with Real People, Invisible Disabilities, True Stories, and it is a series, 35 powerful essays from adults and those who love them with autism, mental illnesses, and other things. Lisa Davis and Tricia, is it Bliven-Chasinoff.
Now he's nervous. Larry's nervous.
Can I give you the website?
I'm obsessed. Yes, that's where I'm going. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I know I'm terrible. So go to itsyourhealthnetwork.com. There's a picture of the book. You can scroll around. You can check out the interviews. Again, itsyourhealthnetwork.com. Itsyourhealthnetwork.com.
And is the book on like Amazon and those other places?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you have a Facebook.
It's not actually released until October 10th is the release date.
Oh,
you
okay.
You can pre-order it, which is cool.
And my notes say you have a Facebook page?
Yes, Easy to Love but Hard to Live with.
If you go into Facebook and just type Easy to Love but Hard to Live with, you'll go to our page and you have information about the book there. But then there's also opportunities to discuss, to kind of carry the discussions that are started in the book a little bit further. on the Facebook page.
Okay, easy to love, but hard to... I just found it. I'm going to like it, or whatever you do with these things. Like it. There you go. I just liked it. You got another liker.
Yay!
You got another liker. Well, Lisa and Tricia, thank you both for being on the air with us today and taking some time out of your day. This is pretty important, and I love the fact that you have other people in the book, because that's kind of, we hear this all the time. Robin and I are supporters of the Children's Craniofacial Association, and when those children see somebody else with a craniofacial issue, it's the same thing. Wow, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one with this. So it is kind of cool that how we are as humans. I guess I'll never figure us out, but it sounds like you have. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you. You are both
Thank you.
fantastic hosts. We really appreciate it.
All right, excellent. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For today, clouds and some sun with a couple of showers and thunderstorms.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. A new president takes over in Afghanistan, and a new agreement expected tomorrow to let U.S. troops stay past the end of the year.
The deal would allow about 10,000 U.S. troops staying in the country after the international combat mission